Welcome to All Things Considered CX, the podcast where we challenge the status quo of customer experience. Hosted by Bob Asman, this show is all about disrupting practices and redefining what it means to truly connect with customers. In this unhinged approach to CX, we're focused on building better experiences from the ground up. Each episode, Bob dives into the bold ideas, unconventional strategies, and fresh perspectives that are shaking up the world of CX. We're bringing you the voices that are pushing boundaries and changing the game. If you're ready to rethink how customer experience is done and drive real transformation, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode of All Things Considered CX.
Hello and welcome back to another episode. We're glad you've joined us again. And today I've got Nick Bond, who's the founder of Apex, joining me. And I'm really looking forward to this because we've been delving into AI and all the things that are going on there and Nick's company, and he'll talk about that in a bit, but Nick's company is really at the forefront of what's happening. So Nick, we're glad to have you. If you would, take a few minutes to introduce yourself to our listeners and a little bit of your background and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's so good to be here, Bob. Thanks for having me. My experience through into the world of CX and customer intelligence has been an interesting one. I earned my stripes, like so many of us, at one of the bigger research houses. I was at Ipsos for about a decade, and then I went retail side up here in Canada with the Canadian Tire Group for about 5 years, leading a strategy team for one of the divisions within the marketing department. So that was when you take a lot of theory and start turning it into application, you start to flex a lot of new muscles, especially within a very large organization, and how to make things that make a lot of sense on paper come to life on the floor. I think those are different skills, and you have a new chance to grow them. So that was that, and then I went over to the agency side for a while, VP of strategy at a couple of agencies before kicking off and starting Apex, or at least what has now become Apex. A company, really based in behavioral science. Why are people making the decisions they're doing from a customer action perspective, starting to quantify that, applying it to broader customer data sets, and now, to your point, infusing the whole thing with a good, healthy dose of AI for scale on automation and speed. And it's just taking off. I think our industry versus AI is very uniquely positioned to lead the way on how this technology can start to not just make everybody's jobs better, but make the way we kind of serve customers better, make the way that we show up in the world better. I think there's, for all the people that talk about the ills of AI, there's a whole bunch of the other side of the coin, the positives, that I think I would rather focus on as well.
That's great, Nick. And we're going to get into that as we go along here. One of the questions I have for you is, and I love to ask this question of entrepreneurs, is what's the trigger? I mean, what did you say to yourself? I got to find, and I know it doesn't go this way, but I'm going to capsulate. Yeah. Why did I have to find Apex and build a company? What was that trigger that led you to that?
Oh, I love that question. And actually, there was a pretty specific one, I would say. Agency I was at previously, typical agency, doing agency work and making your money on creative and media and that kind of thing. And where does strategy fit? And then you start to get onto the question of, well, what are we in the business of? We're in the business of helping our clients, in that case, engage with their customers. How do we do that? Well, let's talk about customer engagement. How do you measure that? And it got to a point where it's like, well, actually, there are no good measures of customer engagement. Any of the work that we did is kind of led back to NPS or CSAT, both of which are pretty dubious in terms of their own ties to business performance. And so we really wanted to understand, if we're going to be this agency that wants to deal in customer engagement, we need a better way to talk about that. And when you start to talk, and then we started to bring behavioral scientists into the fold and say, okay, what does this mean? You start to learn that what engagement is, it's a set of emotions, it's a set of beliefs, it's a set of things that makes you ultimately act like a good customer. You buy more stuff and you advocate and you're loyal and you're not so price sensitive. All these things that brands love about their customers. We wanted to figure out what that looks like. How do we codify that? And so with a couple of clients, we and case studies, we started to develop this thing out and figure out what this could be. And so then began the science and the work and the effort to start to really hone in. What do we mean when we talk about an engaged customer, and how do we not just say, okay, that customer over there is engaged, but why isn't that one engaged? And how do we turn that into something more meaningful? Because even the word engagement is loose and fluffy and loaded. What we ultimately want to do is figure out, how do you make a customer, how do you increase customer, let's get really specific. How do you help a company increase something like customer lifetime value? How do you help a company, through the act of creating more value for customers, get more value from customers and grow their business, reduce churn and reduce attrition and start growing cross-sell and all these things that we want? It had to start with the motivation. And that's where we really focus on at Apex. What is the motivation for these customers? The emotional, the rational, the beliefs that makes them take that step. And then you tie that into all the other kind of transactional data you have. It has unlocked this superpower of data that we didn't even know we were walking into. We thought we were talking at the very beginning, Bob. We honestly thought this was a marketing conversation. How do we help people create a marketing message that's going to be more resonant with a specific segment? And we have, but we've more specifically unlocked what makes a customer a good customer in the first place. Are you even targeting the right kind of people? How are you creating customer experiences through the journey that are helping to help them believe that you're the company that they want you to be, and you're delivering the type of experience they need to get more from them? So it starts to become a very broad business conversation as soon as you start tapping into what makes your customers tick in the first place. So it did start, though, with a very specific question: how do you measure engagement? And it's now turned into this entire, now I think, just about 6-year journey that we've been on.
So, Nick, you mentioned something. Boy, there's a lot to unpack here.
Sorry, yeah, I know.
Really good. No, I love it. I love it. So you mentioned one of my soapboxes, and my listeners would say, oh, here he goes again, customer lifetime value. I think it's a lost science. I think we paid a lot of attention to this 15 years ago, maybe longer than that. Then it kind of faded away, and everybody ran down the NPS thing. And NPS just drives me crazy. I won't go on that soapbox. But, you talked about customer lifetime value and engagement, and I think those are two really important strategies that, in my humble opinion, are being overlooked in today's race to retain customers. We're talking about ROIs and we're talking about journey maps, but we're ignoring the lifetime value and the fact that you brought that in, and what's the motivation. And so that leads to my next question is, why are consumers behaving the way they're behaving? Has it changed?
Yeah. No, totally. You asked a lot to unpack. I think it's so interesting. So I will answer your question very swiftly, but I do think it's fascinating. I do want everybody to double down on this idea of LTV. So you and I are on the exact same page. Marketers have learned that their two biggest metrics are acquisition. How much am I acquiring from a new lead? And cost of acquisition. They live and die by two metrics, right?
Right.
Those are metrics you can tie directly back to business success. CX people in the world of how I'm growing my customers, it's LTV and cost to serve. If you can get everybody their head around, how am I increasing the value of my customers to my business, and how much is that costing my business to do, and find a marriage within there that is healthy for your customers, healthy for your business, and leads to sustainable growth, you are going to be at the table all day long. So LTV, cost to serve, we just need to be focused on those. How you sort of break those down into your specific work groups, fine, but that's what matters. How have people changed? Man, it's been a wild ride, and I think the biggest thing that we just all need to understand in terms of customer behavior, to answer your specific question, no action occurs without an emotion preceding it. None. The extent to which you stay on this podcast with me very much longer is going to be the extent to which you believe I'm going to have something interesting to say. So hopefully I'm providing a bit of intrigue or something kind of different, or some emotion that you think is going to help you not hang up the phone on me. So I hope this stays going. A customer is the exact same. When am I going to purchase from you again? Well, are you providing what they need? Yes or no? Do they like dealing with you? Do you make them feel good? Do they feel like if they buy this from you and it goes haywire, you're going to have their back? So there's a lot of these little emotional kind of cues and triggers that through the journey, you either affirm or deny. You either affirm that you are indeed this type of dependable organization. Let's say dependability is a big one that we track. Or through the journey, you make things clunky and complicated, and you erode their confidence that what if things act like for an insurance company, if things actually get hard, based on my experience just buying a policy, do I think you're actually going to come through for me? Then you have a big problem. And so that's when a lot of quotes don't turn into actual closed policies for an insurance company. You're making things too clunky and you're eroding the confidence in dependability is a big one for insurance. We see words like joyful actually come up a lot, surprisingly, in B2B. They want to, it's the human experience, and that breaks down to a joyful experience. So if you can understand and unlock what is making those emotional connections true, what that motivate their next step, you are unlocking a whole wealth of possibility. Because one of the things we've found is that when you take a customer data set, like somebody's transaction history, and you simply try and tie that directly to, are they going to buy again in the future? It's okay, but not great. But if you can showcase how their previous data actually supports the emotional need that they have from you and how that ties to their future intent, those models get like 3 to 4 times stronger, like a factor. And so you now have this, again, this wealth of knowledge at the human behavior level that is making all your data just sparkle all of a sudden. So it is dependability. It is things like joy. It can be as simple as things like being uncomplicated or being predictable. So I know every time you and I talk on the phone, I'm going to have a similar experience because you are not a different person every time we talk. We get something that I can count on, something that I enjoy. These are the things. We have 16 in total, 16 motivators that we track. But these are the types of things that can make or break, honestly, that LTV conversation.
Wow. This whole concept of feelings and perceptions, I love it. Although I've never asked that on a survey. How did we make you feel? Right? It just drives me crazy. And I often tell this story about how, 2 people can eat the same meal in the same restaurant with the same serving staff and walk away and say, I had a good meal and I had a bad meal, even though they're identical because of their feelings, where they were at that time, where they are there on business or personal, and how was the environment, how did they feel? And that concept of feeling and perception is so impactful to how I would describe my experience. Beyond that, they satisfy me. But to your point about dependability on insurance, if you can't make me feel good, give me a policy quote, in the back of my mind, I'm saying to myself, how are you going to fulfill a claim when I haven't?
100%.
If you can't do a quote, I can't imagine what the claim is going to be like. And so I just think that's an area that it's exciting to hear you getting into, and that you're monitoring those different 16-factor motivators that you talked about.
Yeah, totally. I mean, really, I love the anecdote, walking out of the same meal with the same. Your world is different than my world. The things that make you lean into something is not the same as me. So in fact, these motivators can be a great way to segment your group as well. Maybe you do the same work and there's going to be people that respond and will be a good customer for you in the future because what they need from you is something you can readily provide. But maybe what you need specifically out of my business is not, it's so far out of my wheelhouse to meet that set of intrinsic criteria, these motivations that you require, that it's going to be expensive for me to get you over the line. It's going to be a lot of effort for me. So when you talk about LTV and you talk about cost to serve and you talk about what you need, now that I know who you are, we can make a decision as a business. We can make a decision on how to move that forward. That's a healthy conversation. That's not one where we're bending over backwards trying to appease every customer. It's finding the right balance between who are the right customers for my organization? What am I really good at serving? What parts of the journey can I just tweak a little bit and start to get a lot more value, both for customers and from customers, so that everybody's winning? This is where CX wins. This is where, people in our industry, when we talk about how can you use customer intelligence to further the goals of the business, now we're having such a productive conversation. And so yeah, you're right. I mean, this is exactly why we have started to do what we do and why our clients lean in the way that they do as well.
Mm-hmm. The other thing you mentioned too, Nick, was B2B. And I know a lot of our listeners are in B2B, and sometimes
Yep.
they'll dismiss B2C kinds of activities or research and so forth because they say, well, we're different. I hear that a lot in B2B. Well, we're different. And yet I always come back to saying, but you're still consumers. You're consuming something, a product or a service, and you're making that decision, and you're still a human doing that decision. So I'm not a big advocate of the B2B, B2C split. And when I hear you say and talk about it, and you bring in a term like joyful at B2B, I mean, that just blew some people's heads off that are in B2B right now, because nobody thinks of joy in B2B, right? I think that's a fascinating approach that you're taking.
That is the number one thing whenever we do B2B work and our joy indicator. I can usually at a kind of a alignment or a kickoff conversation with any client, I'm like, watch out, we're probably going to see this idea or an idea similar to joy come up. And they're like, you're full of beans. We are contracts, we're price, we're who sells the widget for less, who has the better terms over 3 years, and that's it. Procurement people don't care after that. And so that is fine and fair and whatever. And then when it comes back and we say, actually, people want to like working with you. People want to enjoy this experience. And in fact, when you are such a big part of their lives is dealing with the maybe 5 or 6 or 7 other major vendors, they need your biggest currency is confidence as a supplier in B2B. And a lot of confidence means that I'm talking on the phone with you. I'm walking away with a smile. I know that I'm not going to get fired for this decision. And beyond that, I might get promoted because you're an awesome partner. You make me feel good. That is joyful for me. And so one thing what we have to always do is triangulate and localize. What does joy mean in this context?
Oh,
because joy is different. You know, we used to have a client in like the large traveling entertainment. It was basically a circus, let's say. Joy in that world absolutely was number one as well, but it meant a very different thing than joy in B2B. But the idea and the way we talk about joy is you're leaving an interaction, you're leaving somebody with a smile on their face. The way you make somebody smile in a B2B setting where your main currency is confidence and coming through and being awesome is different than a circus, but it's still joy. You're still making those same molecular reactions occur in the body that makes people excited to do business with you again. That's all that matters. If they're excited to do business with you again and you've left them smiling, that's a joyful experience. And then we'll break down. What does that mean for you in your job? And what does it mean for this part of the journey or this person over here? That's where it starts to become so impactful. So joy is fun. It breaks the ice on a new kind of conversation. And then we're able to bring that straight back into the business and how they do their work and how they ultimately make money.
How do you get them over the hump of joy and business to business? I just love this idea that you're talking about. Is it just the data and they say, okay, you convinced me? Or how do you get them over the hump to even listen to you?
Well, the best part is it's not really us. It's their own customers or clients or category or competitors. It's people actually saying this. All we're doing is I love to just play. I'm just the messenger. I love playing that guy because then you can't get mad at me. Now, what we have to do, though, if it's just joy and we leave it there, we'll lose them because that sounds fluffy and it sounds silly. The way you make them listen is make it meaningful for their business. Okay, cool, joy. You have me, Nick. Talk to me because I haven't heard this one before. At that point, I've got about 10 minutes to make them know why joy is important and what they can do about it. So that's when we start tying it all back to the business. That's when we start tying it back to things like LTV, like cross-sell, why some people feel joy and they become these large growing customers and others don't, and they tend to stagnate. What do those, every B2B company has the same client list. You have 10 or 20% of people that are providing most of the business for you. Everybody else is this long tail of people using a smattering of weird products and you wish they were bigger, but they aren't. How do we get more to them? Well, if I can start to help them unlock that through a concept like joy, now they're listening. So again, joy is the door opener sometimes, but then whether or not you stick around very long is about how you can help them with the business. That's what honestly most of our work is, the delivering, in their case, the joy insight, or if it's empathetic or if it's uncomplicated, whatever the thing is, once we deliver that insight, Now it's about activation. That's where we spend, honestly, most of our time.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
The concept that you just talked about, 20% of the customers are giving you 80% of your business. What's interesting in my experience has been that, number one, a lot of times companies don't know that. Number two, a lot of times they're spending 80% of their time on the 80% that aren't giving them the revenues, and they're ignoring the 20%.
And they're the highest need customer too.
And they're right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we did a study a number of years ago with a company I was working with, and we were spending all this time on the smallest customer, and they were tremendously unprofitable. And then we did research with our biggest customers, and the number one thing they said to us was, you don't pay enough attention to us. And the ripple through the organization you could hear was an earthquake, because they're like, but these are our biggest customers, and they respond. They loved us, great products, great services. We love you, but we sure would like to hear from you more often, except at contract time. Contracts up, got to start, 3 months ahead of time, you got to start talking to them about a renewal. And so that was really impactful, that organizations need to really identify who their highest value customers are and to spend your time appropriately. Not that all customers aren't important. It's just make sure you've got that in balance with the time you're spending.
It's wild. And one of the things, and I know I come from a huge organization with a big client list of loyalty data and all this stuff as well back when I worked in retail. But the amount we actually know about our own customers is pretty wildly insufficient for what you would expect. And I'm talking about, like, I deal with clients across tons of like all the time. We're always talking. And that's no fault of I guess necessarily anybody's, but it does suggest that there's huge opportunity just sitting there. Because if you can take something and now you say it sounds obvious, but at the time it's insightful. We need to spend more time with the people that give us the most of our money, because if they go away, we go away. Right? I mean, that feels obvious, but at the time it's like, well, no, we have all these people down here complaining. We need to fix them. This long tail of 80% of people that want all your time. Is that the best use of time? Does some of them just not need to be our customers anymore? Can some of this be automated? It's the cost to serve and LTV conversation. That was way out of whack. It sounds like your cost to serve versus what you're getting for them was way out of whack. And we need to spend more time on the people who are actually spending their money with us. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to do, one of the I think goals for us is to help shine a light and illuminate all this wonderful customer data that most companies are sitting on, but don't really have the resources, time, or really expertise to activate. I like to go back, if you'll indulge me for a second, of course, on 10 years ago, like everybody's talking big data, like big data. We're going to buy these like massive Hadoop engines, and we're going to go and we're going to churn through all this data, and we're going to learn that this adjacency in this retail space is going to create, it's going to create this massive wealth of knowledge, and we're going to make money hand over fist. And so the easy thing happened first, which was you started basically collecting all the data. Okay, well, we have POS data and you have marketing data. Let's make sure our email data is all fit. And so everything just starts getting collected all over the place. Like, it's not talking to you, at least it's getting collected. And then the effort to actually analyze and do something with it all turned out to be enormous with the technology of 10 years ago. So people kind of just stopped, like very quietly just sort of stopped those investments, and the people that were charged with it just sort of went away, and those project teams just sort of went away. But what didn't turn off was all the tap in terms of collecting the data. People are still collecting data all over the place. I had a client recently call it his data ponds. We have all these, no lakes. Nobody got as far as creating a lake, but they have all these ponds of data all over the place. And if all you need to do now is take all these ponds of years of demographic and transactional and behavioral and marketing and all this data that you have, and make sense of it. People are looking for more data. If you can be somebody that makes sense of it using, like I said, some of these new tools in AI with automation, we're in a better place today than we've ever been to start making sense of all of this. Man, the wealth of information and the wealth of actionable intelligence you can start to get people moving on is it's almost limitless. And so I'm really excited about what this means for our category. I'm excited what it means for businesses in general to know that, hey, all I really need to do is turn this on, start using these technologies to start making better sense of where I'm spending 80% of my time, for example. Oh, look, we've identified that of the 20% that give us most money, half of them are at risk because of this new thing. Let's get on that. That's good to know. So I don't know. I'm really bullish about the future just because of the data that now exists that didn't exist before. The fact that it's basically this mine sitting untapped, that companies are just looking for ways to get that edge and to help deliver more value and get more value. That's where we're at today as an industry. It's pretty exciting times.
Mm-hmm. You talk about on big data, and I agree with you 100%. These fads just kind of come and go. They're the topic of every conference for like 5 years, and then
Totally.
they're gone. But this concept of big data, we see that a lot in experience management, right? A lot of surveys being collected, a lot of information coming in, and very few closed loop systems, very few ways. One of the things that I do on occasion just to humor myself is I'll fill out a survey and say your service sucked, and see if I get a response from somebody, and you never do.
You never do.
You do, right? And so the utilization of the data is so key. And so I think your point is well taken on that and how we utilize it. So we could talk for hours. I love podcasts where you could talk for hours on it. Only people don't listen for hours. That's the problem.
So I know our audience now, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So where are you taking Apex? What do you see? Because you talk to a lot of clients. You're clearly in tune with what is happening in experience management. Where is this going? You kind of started that on that path, but where do you look in your crystal ball and tell me where we're going here?
I see. So for Apex, I mean, the way that we are going to be, we're already doing tons of R&D in this space, but how do we start to use existing customer data and apply these insights and overlays without needing to do any more data collection? How do you do it without more surveys? Because if we can just unlock, and we're basically there. I don't want to do any big product announcements here today. I'm not quite ready yet, but okay. But if we, maybe soon though, we'll stay in touch. But if we can start to look at a customer and look at their history and look at everything about them and say, wow, there's a very good chance this person is doing business with you first and foremost because you get them. There is a level of empathy between their life and your product and service and business and culture that they love. And here's how you can start to engender that further. And here's where the gaps are probably existing in your service design, in your journeys. And now you start to give companies, and then what we like to do is actually quantify and create simulations. What happens if X to the business? What happens if Y to the business? All the way through to things like revenues and sales. But what we're really trying to do is unlock for everybody. How can we better serve customers so that they can create better value for us? How can we no longer feel like we need to be making decisions in a vacuum or relying on hunches? Because we really don't need to. There's too much good data everywhere right now. And ultimately, companies and businesses, they're operating smaller. Since COVID, the teams that existed 5 years ago in most companies aren't the size that they were 5 years ago. CFOs and CEOs and boards, they like the fact you can, I'm not disparaging anybody, by the way. I'm just literally pointing out facts and observations. They like the fact you can run a business pretty small and pretty lean. And so when, the world opens back up, the teams don't necessarily follow at the same volumes of humans. You have to learn to do more with less. You have to be good at providing strong value with smaller budgets, smaller teams, maybe somebody on the inside whose job it isn't necessarily dedicated to just learning your platform or learning your thing. You have to say, what can I do tomorrow to generate X for my business? And that's exactly where we're taking this. We're making it like we're making it so easy. We're making it so smooth. We're making it so simple to like take it to your boss and say, look, this is why I suggest we do this to the checkout process. Here's the investment. Here's the outcome. Let's do it. Boom. And so if we can make it that easy for businesses to leverage the wealth and the needs of the wealth of data, I don't mean with their monetary wealth, but like the wealth of information from their customers to just do everything better, do everything easier. Don't question the value of a CX or intelligence person in the organization, but instead position that person to be integral to the decision-making conversations in the organization. That's everything right now. I think, we want to take, the ease. Everybody says I'm a data-led leader. I'm a data-led manager. I'm a data-led this. You hear that all the time. You like read any resume, 9 out of 10 of them say that somewhere. We want to make it actually doable for that to be real and not just a talking point. Because honestly, from what I'm seeing, it's more of a talking point, especially if you get higher up into leadership. It's just harder because it's harder to use that data. Right. It becomes more and more fragmented. It's a quagmire. I don't know what it leads. That's not good enough. They have the information. All we're trying to do is make it super simple to actually be the data-led organization that you aspire to be. Boom. Mm-hmm. And then from there on, everybody wins. Your customer's happy. You're happy. Everybody's growing. Jobs forever, et cetera, et cetera.
I love it. Oh man, this podcast is called All Things Considered CX Unhinged, and Nick, you did it for us. You disrupted and caused us to think differently about this. This is fantastic. Before I let you go, how do people get? I know you're on LinkedIn, Nick Bond on LinkedIn, but why don't you give your website address for Apex and look forward to product announcements in the future for people?
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for that. Yeah. So find me on LinkedIn anytime, Nick Bond. ApexScore.ai is the website. You can, get on there, check it out. You can click all the buttons and find us there as well. But honestly, we're just happy for the conversation with anybody that kind of cares about the stuff we care about. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. And I think for anybody, especially, and I'm meeting more and more of them who are teams of one within their organizations, working on building intelligence, but you just need more resources. You need that team. You need that automation. You need that scale. That's where this is going. And so that we are designed to serve small teams trying to do big things. And I'm excited to meet all the people who feel the same way.
Yeah, that's great. And the fact that you are talking about using AI for an increasing and better experiences and cost to serve is so critical because, in the contact center industry, we're always looking about how to cut costs. And what you're talking about is profit centers as opposed to cost centers. Combination of both will create a win. And I think that's just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, exactly. AI, ultimately, it's going to elevate whatever the priority is of the day. If you want AI to create cost savings and start to AI agents and start to, reduce costs in some places, I guess you can do that. If you want to use it more of an elevation tools and platforms to help your agents create better, more, personalized, wonderful experiences, you can do that as well. It is simply a set of tools that will magnify the goals of your organization. And either way, I think it's helpful, and and everybody just needs to get on it, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's not something anybody can ignore for very much longer.
It's not going away. It's not a fad.
It's not a fad. Right. And, I continue to meet organizations that have barriers to usage. The lawyers, the insurance people are not sure if you should be using AI. I'm telling you, you have to. It's literally changing everything about how businesses and customers interact. The sooner you start getting comfortable with it, put whatever policies in place that you need, but you got to open the door because there is just way too much happening way too quickly.
I agree 100%. Check it out, listeners. Nick Bond, founder of Apex. And we're really glad you joined us today, Nick, from Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. In case you didn't notice his accent, I wanted to clarify that. So it's been a great conversation, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Bob. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.